3 of your Wednesday edition of Justice and Drew is underway.
You know, let's bring on Representative Jason Lewis. I know we have like things of substance to talk about, but I gotta pick his brain just for a moment. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Hey, gentlemen, how are you?
We're doing good. Is this one of those moments where you look at all the news and we obviously know that you love what you do, and we're so glad that you are in Washington doing what you do. But oh my gosh, talk about talk radio fodder. I mean, we didn't even have to like prep this morning.
Right.
It's so chaotic right now.
This morning too. I mean, that's a jam-packed, star-studded gala at Justice and Drew this morning. How's that for a promo?
Right? It's just, I mean, is there any moment you go, oh man, I wish I was on the airwaves where I could just dissect all, or if you just, you know what, I had my time. I'm glad that it's behind me now.
Well, you know, it's funny you should say that. My experience, and I don't know what yours has been, but my experience over more than a couple of decades in broadcasting was sometimes when you thought, oh man, this thing is so hot, the topics are so hot, there's so much in the news, and you go there and maybe you don't do enough prep. The shows aren't as good as when you really have to work at them and you hit on something that may or may not be in the news that just lights up an audience. So You never can tell. It's sort of like politics that way. But yeah, there's lots to talk about, and I wouldn't rather be any place else than here actually trying to get something done. And I'm glad to say we're doing that, which is why, by the way, so many people are after us. If you're effective, they see you as a threat. And that's like, so you can judge someone's effectiveness by the intensity of their enemy, I guess.
We got a couple topics I want to hit while we got you on here for just a few minutes. The first one is, you potentially big news in regards to the Met Council. You've been working with the Department of Transportation to get an official review of the Met Council's structural compliance with federal law. Explain what that means real quick.
Right. Andrew, to the point of where would you rather be, it is really gratifying when you're making progress. And this is a development that is the epitome of progress, because we've been talking about restructuring the regional government in the Twin Cities for decades. Mm-hmm. And finally, I'm glad to say I'm making some headway here after talking about it for so long, and so many politicians coming and going who don't do anything or try to torpedo any reform, which some of the Democrats in the Minnesota delegation are doing. What we did is in 1991, there have been a couple of federal adjustments, statutes, and rulings from the DOT that says, look, if you're going to have a regional government that can independently raise taxes, that's the largest budget in the country, they've got to have, like every other MPO in the country, an elected board member. So there's accountability. We were grandfathered in. The Met Council said, well, yeah, but look, we've got a TAB board, advisory board. We've never had elected board members. Why not just let us go? And grandfathered in the ruling. And finally, that's coming to a head. I asked the DOT to review that, given the developments and the restructuring of the Met Council in the 90s, that they're out of compliance with every other MPO in the country, by the way. And they said, as the letter it reveals, that, okay, you got a point, we're going to take a look at this. And so we're finally getting someone at DOT to review the structure of the Met Council. Now, having said that, there's also legislation I proposed to do the same thing and force the issue over a span of 2 to 5 years, restructuring. But unfortunately, a few members of the Minnesota delegation are fighting that behind the scenes.
If the DOT does go forward with this review and they find that the Met Council is not in compliance with federal law, because if memory serves, this is one of the only, if not the only, sort of regional planning organization in the country that is structured the way it is, it got grandfathered in over time. If they find that it is out of compliance, do they have the authority to force them to restructure?
Well, you can't force anybody to do anything. You can simply say, if you're not in federal compliance, you're not eligible for DOT grants. Now, other MPOs have done that, and then when they were out of compliance after a 1991 law, then they said, look, you got to get in compliance, and they did it. And the DOT said, we'll work with you. How about we'll do this over a transition of 2 years, maybe even 3 years. So it's never a case of, well, we're just going to cut off the money. But there is a case of you need to reform, or eventually you're going to lose out. And that's exactly the way the system should work, and that's what we're trying to do.
Without a governor in this state who is.
What's kind of amazing about this one thing, Andrew, is how many decades has the Met Council been around? Since the 1960s, right? And how many decades have we been talking about this?
Yeah.
And where have all the politicians been?
Yeah.
I get here my first term and I say, well, let's take a look at this and let's fix it.
Is that what it takes? Does it take somebody
kind of
coming in there like yourself without any real care for the way things have always been done, without any real care for the status quo? Does it take a Jason Lewis to go in there and be like, why haven't we done this yet? Let's get on this. Let's get this done.
This is what 2016 and 2018 is about. Do you want to actually keep this going and have people represent their constituents who are stuck on I-35 or on 494 in the 2nd District and do something? Or do you just want someone that wants to be a member of Congress and assume the office and sort of ride? I have no intention of doing that, no interest in doing that. I'm here to get something done, and this is a pretty good example, I think.
Well, and it's fascinating, too, because this spins right back into the conversation we were having with Karin Housley and the same conversation that we've had with Doug Wardlow and those running for other seats here in Minnesota, and that is, we've got a slate of individuals, including yourself, that just want to go, you want to do the job. I mean, look at Attorney General. Doug Wardlow just wants to go and do the job. It's just about getting things done. It's not like you said, just going and serving there and writing out your term or politicizing at every single turn to get what you believe is best for your party. No, it's actually about going in and accomplishing something and doing what's required. It's not that hard.
When you look at the greatest regulatory relief in a generation, the greatest tax reform in over 3 decades, the Met Council, juvenile and criminal justice reform, getting the Enbridge pipeline built, working on a permanent repository at Yucca Mountain. I am proud to say we've done more in one term than most folks do in a career, and that's what we want to keep going. The alternative, fellas, is total chaos, total obstruction, total dysfunction. And we're seeing that, quite frankly, in the Supreme Court right now. In that nomination. And now do you want that as an everyday occurrence? That's what's at stake here. Results versus resistance.
When we talk about results, there's another story, and I hope I'm not throwing you a curveball. This was wasn't really why we wanted to have you on, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it because it popped on my radar just a little bit ago. Out of Politico, a story that came out just a bit ago, unforgiving news cycle buries GOP spending victory. The reporter writes that Congress is on the cusp of a funding victory that hasn't been accomplished in a generation, but hardly anyone is paying attention, even though it will likely avert a government shutdown. Basically saying that both chambers of Congress have cleared 87% of federal funding without a single blowup and with days to spare before the September 30th deadline for fiscal 2019. Would be very interested on your comments, your thoughts on the progress of these spending measures and where you fall.
Well, we're still spending too much, and that's why I voted against the omnibus bill. But I will say this. Not only is it with days to spare, not only is it avoiding a government shutdown, to your point about results and getting things done, but by and large, we're doing this in regular order, where the bills go to their committee of jurisdiction, they are authorized, marked up, they go to the appropriations committee, there's a debate, it goes to the floor, you vote on it. Now, there's a minibus here or there, but by and large, this has been done on regular order for the first time in decades. Were it not for, gentlemen, the veritable blackout on positive coverage about the 115th Congress or this administration, people would know this. It is sort of a turning point.
Before we let you go this morning, Representative Jason Lewis, just real quick, your thoughts heading into the next 48, 72 hours. We know the vote on Kavanaugh after tomorrow's hearing, regardless of what happens, is supposed to be taken on Friday. Just curious what your expectation is. Is this thing going to go? Huh?
Take the vote.
Yeah.
Take the vote. Up or down, you need to get people on record on this. I tell you, we need to hear from everybody. I want to watch Thursday, but I am extremely troubled by overturning 2,000 years of Western jurisprudence when we say someone has to prove their innocence and the accuser does not have to prove guilt. That is, if every American isn't terrified over that, then pretty soon we're just going to have a country of people making charges without any evidence whatsoever. So if there's evidence, oh boy, let's take a look at that and let's make our judgment accordingly. If there is not, then we're running down a Kafkaesque scenario where people just get accused for political purposes.
Yeah, and
that
I
is
think
a very, very dangerous scenario.
I think people need to think about that a little bit more, because I have seen and heard many people on the left, many Democrats, sort of gleefully exclaim when presented with that very argument, that you're asking Kavanaugh to prove his innocence, without any sort of due process, without any corroboration or evidence from the accuser. And they will gleefully respond, well, this isn't a criminal hearing. That's only required in criminal hearings. This isn't a criminal hearing.
In college, it's not a criminal hearing, but students are being thrown out of school based on charges that turn out to be false. But they take away due process, and they throw them out, and then, oh gosh, my college career is ruined. Well, don't worry, it's not a criminal trial. It's just your college career.
Yeah,
and it's just a Supreme Court nomination, and you're just threatening a man's reputation and his life, and the women he loves are also being threatened with their reputation being soiled. That is a horrible argument. Due process is due process, whether it's in a court or whether it's in the Senate or whether it's on a college campus.
The principle of innocent until proven guilty, while yes, technically only really, legally applies in a criminal proceeding, but the principle of it should matter to everyone at every time. That should be just a principle that people live with. And to me, I think the left has revealed something very, very kind of gross about the way they think and the way that they approach issues, because they clearly don't care about that principle. When they respond so quickly with, yeah, that's only for criminal proceedings. That doesn't matter out here in the real world. No, it should matter. It should matter in every situation.
And there may yet be evidence that's probative. So let's hear it. But if there isn't, the idea of just an accusation being enough, where I just want to ask everybody, where do you think that's going to end? Yeah. It's not going to end well.
No. Representative Jason Lewis, as always, man, keep up the good fight. Thanks for what you do, and thanks for joining us this morning.
Yep, thank you.
Hey, real quick, we're talking transportation there a moment ago, Drew. I do have a really good, there's a real good tease coming up in just a moment, so just propel yourself.
I love a good tease.
There's a good tease coming up. First off, though, Star Tribune, Mindlar sucks. Not as bad as Keith Ellison, mind you.
Yeah, it's a disaster.
Yeah. So is Keith Ellison, but Mindlar's is bad.
Oh, Keith Ellison is